Soul, a podcast that explores the heart and soul of the real estate industry. I'm your host, Khalid Nathan Aleem, the real estate boy. And together, we're going to dive into the stories and experiences of professionals who are dedicated to serving underserved community in the real estate industry. So, whether you're a real estate professional, a home buyer, or simply interested in the real estate industry, this podcast is for you. So, join us as we dive into the world of Real Estate with Soul. So today, my guest is Shad Hammond. Welcome to the podcast, man.
Hey, pleasure to be here. I'm Shad Hammond. Always good to be a guest on Real Estate with Soul.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. So I like to bring Shad on so we can talk about the market. Today, we're talking about the Philadelphia real estate market. But before we get into that, man, for those of the people who are joining us for the first time, man, why don't you tell them a little bit about your background, Shad?
So my name is Shad Hammond. I've been a licensed real estate agent actually longer than I've been a lender. I am a lender serving 39 states. I have been a real estate agent now for about 12 years. Don't necessarily practice currently. I've been a lender for about 8 years. I've closed over 1,100 loans across this 39 states, serving mostly a first-time buyer demographic, a first generational home buyer demographic. And it's become something that went from a job to a career to a passion. So currently serving primarily the Mid-Atlantic region, PA, Jersey, Delaware, Maryland. But you can find me if you need me, if you need a home.
Nice, nice. Right. All things real estate, man.
All
So
things real estate.
how was your week, man? I mean, real estate wise, how'd your week go?
Busy week. We've secured a couple more contracts, which is always good. We are seeing a bump in activity. We continue to see a lot of interested buyers, a lot of committed buyers. We're even seeing some pre-approved buyers, but unfortunately, we're still falling just short in regards to the inventory that we need to be able to fully service them. So the demand is still high, the supply is still challenging.
Right. That's the same thing on my story, man. Do you have people out there that's looking that just can't find anything?
Yeah. Um, as you know, sometimes we can lock folks down a couple days, couple weeks. We're seeing people now have to shop, for a much longer time. Now, as you know, you're totally committed to service, and we try to keep our buyers engaged and let them know, the longer it takes, the more you could be building your brand in regards to you being a qualified buyer, right? So it's not just cat. We're telling them that because it gives them opportunities to build and can perhaps longer work history. We are seeing folks having to shop longer because, again, these challenges inventory wise are making it a bit of a struggle.
Now, what are people saying to you as far as mortgage rates? I mean, I know that's the thing that the news industry likes to put out there, but I guess how are people handling these mortgage rates?
I mean, we in the business know it could be a ton worse, right? We know you could have a 10 or 12% interest rate. Those of us in the commercial sector are seeing those kind of rates now. Um, the long game is the game that we play with real estate, and that's our messaging, right? So it's being able to secure the property and worrying about your rate and your monthly payment um, from more of a long-term perspective, right? And so we know the opportunity to refinance could be here. We could be looking at the next best refi boom in the next 6 to 12 months. We don't know. We don't have a crystal ball, but we do know that real estate again is the long play, and we will have an opportunity to continue to work on your payment as you maintain your biggest investment. The interest rates right now probably somewhere in the low to mid sixes. We have teased and played footsie with rates in the high fives. We do think, we're one good news announcement from the Fed or some lowering of inflation or, a softening in the labor market. we're one press conference away from rates somewhere in the mid fives, and I think that would totally turn the real estate market locally as well as nationally on the seat of its pants, and we'll all be making sweet music again.
Right. It's like people are just waiting. It's almost
Just
like
waiting.
double dutch. They're almost just waiting kind of
Yeah,
to get
yeah.
into the game. It's funny because I was going through some of my old um, information and I found
Hmm.
my loan for my first house. This was in, this had to be 2009 or 2010 or something like that. And the mortgage rate was like 8.4%.
Wow.
And I've,
Yeah.
and I do remember getting the loan totally clueless on where to go. I got it from actually it was Wachovia at that time, where I think PNC bought
Mm,
somebody bought Wachovia. But
yeah.
like
Core
most people,
states by COVID and Wells, something
right?
like that.
Like most people now, my mindset was like, oh, well, let me just go to the bank that I bank at. And I went down to the bank that I bank at, and they gave me a whopping 8.4% interest rate that I really had no clue about. But I was just thinking about, okay, can I afford this monthly payment? And if I can afford this monthly payment, now the house is only like $65,000. But if I can afford this monthly payment, then I'm good. I don't care about the interest rate. Do you have
Mhm.
folks like that?
Absolutely. That's what mortgage professionals will tell you nationwide is that you don't sell rate, right? There's plenty of times where you don't even bring it up. And it's not that you're trying to avoid it or be shady. The rate is the rate. You can't control that. It's much bigger than the loan professional that's sitting in front of your face. You can't control that. But what is more of an impact to you is the monthly payment. Can you swing it long term? And that's what all of that pomp and circumstance leading up to you signing, your life away on the dotted line, getting your house. That's what that whole process is. Can you, at least on paper, show that you can qualify, right, to make that monthly payment for a 30-year marriage? But that's what we talk about. How will that impact you as well as impact the safe payment of all of your bills collectively? And if you can confidently say, yes, I can afford that $1,500 a month, well, that's great. Because I'll tell you, over that 30-year marriage, your payment will not be $1,500 a month,
Right.
right? We know that you'll have opportunities to lower your payment, maybe get better insurance, maybe the taxes go down. Good luck with that. But interest rates, they come and they go.
All
It's an
right.
ebb and flow, right? They come and they go. And you'll have countless of opportunities to change that 8 point whatever. Because I know for sure, whether you own that property or not, you wouldn't have 8% now, right? You would have had at
Exactly.
least several times to be somewhere in the twos, three.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, I did hear this, and we are going to talk about the Philadelphia um, market because stats just came out for the March, for March of 2023. So stats just came out for that. So we'll talk about that soon. But we're hearing a lot of clamor of this 40-year product.
I was hoping you brought that
Um,
up, sir.
is it already here? Is it in the works? Where are we with the institutionalizing of this 40-year fixed loan?
So forgive me because I've read now at least like 25 articles on it. We've had some chatter internally at the company that I work for. And so let's talk about it real quick without sharing too much of your time on it. So 40-year mortgage. So why a 40-year mortgage, right? Well, we know the longer you stretch that mortgage out, right? The longer you stretch the term length, right? That's the number of years. So whether it's a 10-year or 15-year, 20-year, 30-year mortgage, and possibly 40, the longer you stretch and give yourself time to pay, essentially the lower your payment will be, right? The lower those installments will be, which again, if I'm able to lower my payment, that means I'm able to make payments, right, a lot easier and be able to afford my house. So if the 30-year payment or the 15-year payment was kicking my butt, possibly if we gave it a little bit more time and chopped those payments down some, I could be able to afford that payment, thus possibly not only affording the house, but maybe even you'll see some be able to try to buy more house, right?
Mm,
Because they'll be able to afford, a 40-year mortgage attacks affordability, right? It builds up affordability for home buyers who might not be able to comfortably buy their house with a shorter term. Now, that's what it means. However, the application of the 40-year mortgage for this run has been more conjecture, right? We see more people talk about the same thing that I just talked about, giving you more time to pay a debt, which means you're taking smaller bite-sized chunks to get it done. But the application now, what people aren't really talking about, it's a 40-year modification loan, meaning people will be able
mm,
to add time to the back end of their loan and unfortunately even pay a penalty, right? Because it's not going to come for free. So it's more so at this point, the first application that you may see is the fact that anybody that could be in trouble or have challenges being able to pay their payment, they're at being able to add time to the back end of their loan for up to 40 years. And like I said, it's not going to come for free. It's going to come at a cost, and just the fact that we are using that 40-year terminology, many people think, we'll be able to look at, again, a traditional 40-year loan that you can just say, hi, I want to buy a house. What are your terms?
right.
And someone that does my job say, I got a 40-year for you, right? But we're not there yet. We're going to see more 40-year modification loans. And I ask
Wow.
anybody to look that up and you'll see.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Because that's definitely what I was reading. What I understood from it
Hmm.
was that, like, just like now, you go and fill out an application and get a 30-year loan, you'll
Hmm.
be able to go and get a
Right?
40-year loan. And I'm like, okay, well, as a buy and hold investor, then I can go buy a home. My monthly payment, my cash flow will be more because the monthly payment will be less because it's stretched out over 40
Good
years
thinking.
instead of 30 years. And who do I know that paid their house off after 30 years? Maybe my grandfather, but that's
Thank
about
you.
it.
Thank you for bringing that up because if you think about it, again, that's really good thinking. So if you have no desire to ever sell that home, and you
Mhm.
have very little desire, honestly speaking, to actually pay it off, then why not just draw up? I mean, again, mortgages are simply just a piece of paper where two sides are making an agreement of this is what the payment will be until it's not, right? Until it's
Right.
not. So we have a 30-year term, but really, what does that mean? Like you said, outside of Pop Pop and my mom and Miss Barbara and whomever, a lot of these people, that particular note will never be seen till its completion. So it could be a 100-year mortgage, right?
Right.
And have a $400 payment on the house, right? A $200 payment on the house. Because essentially, as long as you're paying and that person is making money off the interest, everybody's happy. And we're just going to pay and pay and pay until we're not. And that note gets ripped up in place of another note, right? But
Right.
notes are barely ever seen from start to completion, right? And adding a 40-year product is going to just, again, make, affordability a lot more, reasonable or a lot more foreseeable for someone. If investors have privy to that product, um, obviously, like you said, now we're getting a bigger ROI, lesser payment. We're still going to charge the same rent, right? We're not going to charge less rent because it's a 40-year mortgage on it. So it does
Right.
offer more of a return. So, no, good thinking from our investor standpoint. We'll see what the application looks like. I'm glad you brought it up. But what people aren't really talking about, even on these network shows, like people are actually covering this thing on the news, is that
Mhm.
more so it's a modification, meaning people will add time to the back end of their loan legally up to 10 years. And like I said, it's not for free, right? It will come at a penalty.
Okay, got you, man. Hey, I want to ask you, even again before we jump into, because we're going to jump into the Philadelphia market, but these
Mhm.
special purpose credit programs, okay? For those of you who don't know, this is something that's kind of been on the books. It's been available for the last 50 years, but rarely used, and it allows banks and creditors to consider prohibited basis information in credit transactions to meet the special needs, and it's really geared towards black and brown folks. So I guess in layman's terms, there's special programs where they can consider people who would normally not be considered, that have higher debt to income ratios or have issues with their credit. So there was a recent article that came out because the president of NARAB is making a bigger push for these things. And what was shocking to me was that these things are already on the books. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
not like people have to do special programs for 'em, but they're just not doing it. So the only lender that they mentioned that was trying to do this was Rocket Mortgage. And it seemed like they downgraded their program where they was giving out $7,500, but then they
Did you hear
tailored it
5,000?
back to $3,000.
3,000, right? Went to seven
Right.
to five to then to three. Yeah.
Right. So I guess what's been your experience with these programs, if any, and can you give us some inside information? I mean, I kind of know, probably I can guess why they're probably not promoting this stuff, but do you have any um information or any experience with these programs?
Well, I tell you again, read a lot of articles. Rocket has something. Wells has teased. Fannie, I believe Fannie Mae has put. I'm sorry. Freddie Mac has borrower smart access or something like that. There's a couple, and they're essentially non like the buyer doesn't have to pay them back. They're legit credits, right?
Mm,
And the buyer doesn't have to pay, has to meet certain criteria. They're only in target markets. And so, again, based off of what
mm,
I've read,
correct.
Rocket has pushed it. I've had a couple of local CDCs, community development centers, housing agencies reach out to me personally to kind of get my idea to see if, the lender that I work for, which is a big lender, would be a participating lender. And from everything that I've seen, is that a lot of the programs get just to the doorstep of application and then somebody pulls the plug. And
Mm,
unfortunately, me on these ground, on being on the front lines and not in some boardroom somewhere, I don't know
okay.
necessarily why the delay. So
Okay.
those programs were supposed to be ramped up for the spring market of this year, but you
Mm,
you aren't seeing those programs being used at a high regard. And so again, you mentioned high DTI, typically lower credit score, and obviously the demographic that they're shooting for, low to moderate income, people of color, right?
right.
And they're also shooting for large metro areas. So Philly, Camden, and Wilmington for this region. You've seen DMV, Baltimore, DC, Northern Virginia. You've seen Chicago and Cook County. You've seen Atlanta, surrounding areas. You've seen Miami-Dade County. You've seen Houston. You've seen Kansas City, Missouri, St. Louis. Couple places out west, but then it starts to spread out and get a little bit more sporadic. But heavy on the metro area, heavy on the low to moderate income, heavy obviously on first time buyer, heavy on people of color. Just to try to bridge, just to try to collectively shorten that gap between home ownership. And I mean, I
Yeah,
think that
people.
the intentions are pure, right? But I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure why we haven't seen that application yet.
Yeah, and I'll after this, I'll definitely do some more research to kind of see, like, hey, what's going on? Why hasn't this been pushed to the forefront? Um, because
That's a good
you and
topic.
I know we're dealing with individuals in the underserved community, and a lot of times they're making the monthly payment because they're already paying rent. So it's not like they're not making a monthly payment, but they just have some debt to income issues, or they'll have credit issues, and you can't fix the credit issues overnight. So this type of program would and this type of program would be awesome, but I would like to see who has done this program,
Yeah.
because maybe it's someone has done the program and the results weren't desirable, and that's why nobody else is doing it. But they should really try to put that out. Um, and I'm there's a black mortgage company. I want to say their name is
Legacy.
Legacy.
Yep.
Yeah, but
Legacy.
they had 100% program.
They got a
I don't know if
lot
they
of
have
good stuff.
rolled it out.
Yeah, they got a lot of programs that a lot of lenders and banks are really either not courageous enough to push, or
Mm.
their mouth says something, but their actions just aren't matching up. I like to see where Legacy goes with some of their programs for the next year or two. They have a lot of good ideas, and if they apply them and they really touch a number of folks across the country, I think they'll really be a disruptor. And you really will start to see black and brown people using a black and brown bank, which we haven't seen what that looks like, right? We haven't seen what that looks like in real life yet. So I would love to see what Legacy does. They do have it 100% financing product. They do have a couple of really big lender based grants that, again, buyer never has to pay back. So it's not like a second mortgage that you make your first payment, then now you got to make this other check out to $75 a month for the next 10 years or something like that. Though they have legit grants that you do not have to pay back as long as you occupy the house for a certain amount of time. So I mean, they do have a lot of things that they're willing to do to foster home ownership. And just going back to your last point, I think it's SPCP. Is that what it's called? If anybody, because again, like you said, we'll continue,
SPCP, right? That's right.
right. We'll continue to do our own research.
Hmm.
But obviously your viewers are more than welcome to Google some of these good topics that you're bringing up this morning, sir. So SPCP.
Right. And I just want to, because there's going to be, of course, trolls out there that are like, oh, well, why should they have special programs for black and brown individuals? Well, if that's the case, you want to open a history book or go
Oof.
Google of the decades of history of the government. I mean, redlining, just to say redlining, just that word in itself, that's enough. But you got the GI Bill. You just have decades of history of the government supporting white families in getting homes during the times of segregation, which produced these suburbs that you have now, these suburban areas that you have now.
Yeah.
And through that, through the home equity, now you're able to do different things. You have generational wealth that can be passed down. And this has happened decade over decade over decade over decade, that black folks were systematically cut out of. So if you're going to get on here and troll about special programs for black and brown people, then I need you to troll the government's behavior towards black and brown people in the past, which produced today's current condition. And I guess just to get off my soapbox
Yeah,
in a quick second
it's
is
hard
that
to get off that soapbox, man.
listen,
And you
is
started
that
something, so I
it's
got to
time
jump
for
in
us.
real quick because
Go ahead.
yeah, yeah, just because it's something that you support. So it's Black Realist Week, right?
Right.
And one of the groups that you are one of the leaders of locally, right? So good job, because folks like myself are able to to keep tabs on what is a big be evolving into a more of a collective amongst realtors in our area and real estate professionals in our area. And I'm glad to see the group go. So it's Black Realist Week this week. And I went to an event yesterday with a good friend of mine who's the director of housing for affordable housing of PA. So Ken Bigos, Chris Sample, God rest his soul, right? And a number of other prominent folks in that group had a fair housing. Um, the discussion was on fair housing. A panel was there, Victoria Mack, and we talked a lot about redlining. We talked a lot about systemic racism in regards to what is probably the most important part of being a human being is having a fair, safe shelter to
Mm,
live in so that we can then build our families, build our careers. And you can't do any of those things without a safe place to rest your head and eat your food and raise your family. And if a certain group was given a head start to do that decades in advance of another group, why do you think that group is going to feel so much trauma and have such a struggle to achieve what you've been
Right.
given
Right.
essentially decades and decades and decades ago? So, we've seen so many groups have a head start over others, and now it's time to reach back, and again, shorten that gap up. Fairness and equality in home ownership is life changing, right? And again, we talked a lot about trauma because not having a safe place to rest your head, eat your food, and raise your family leads to other things that have nothing to do with home ownership, right? Behavioral issues and mental health issues, and not being able to get a good job because you are not rested, and not having good rest in a safe place to live is, I mean, it's all interconnected, right? And so, it was a good, powerful discussion last night. So, off my soapbox, but you trigger me, right? And last night we got a chance to really talk about some deep stuff. It's a lot of trauma and pain without having a safe place to reside, man.
Right, right. Man, that's it jumps off into so many other social issues, man. So many social issues. But all right, man, let's jump into these numbers, man. Let's
Philly
jump into
market,
these numbers, all right?
Philly market.
So the Philadelphia
What's up,
metro
Philly?
area, this does include Camden, New Jersey, and Wilmington, Delaware. So this just came out from Bright a couple days ago, but this is talking about March's numbers. All right, the numbers or the stats in Philadelphia or in real estate lag. Okay, they lag because you got to get the information and then give it out. You got to compile it and then give it out. Okay, so um, the median sales price actually went up month over month. So from last March to this month, March, we're up 5.5%. So now the median price of a home in Philadelphia is basically $325,000, man. How do you feel about that uptick?
So what that's telling you, or at least in my opinion, is that the demise of real estate, is just, I think that is just been incorrect. The real estate isn't going anywhere, right? We're not going to see this crazy, bubble nightmares of 2008. Why? Because the demand is so ridiculously high still, even though it's cooled off. And if you look next door to that new listings, that probably is an indicator of demand, right? And people being a little cautious to list or cautious to get involved into the mix. But home values are still increasing. They're not increasing as crazily as they were in 2020 and 2021, but it still shows you that if they're increasing, the market is still healthy, right? And we're not seeing a bubble because there's just too much demand. And then people that do my job are still heavily regulated. So as long as that's the case, you're still going to see homes appreciate. So that's a good
All
number.
right. Well, I think there's one caveat to it is that what you're seeing there, because activity has fell off a cliff. Okay,
It
activity
has.
is down almost a quarter. It's been down a quarter, but no homes being on the market. This is the issue that we don't have a lot of
Mhm.
homes on the market, and but it makes sense. And this is going to be a continuous theme is that what's propping the market up right now or what's supporting it is that there's not a lot of homes out there. There's just not a lot of homes out there. So, and
It's
also
not.
people got to look at this is that real estate is super local. Real estate is super local. So you can look at the TV. The TV is talking about the nation as far as real estate. But here, this is showing you the Philadelphia market. Why have we been seeing an increase in prices? The increase in prices because there's just not a lot of homes out there. So, for example, there's I got a buyer. He wants to, I mean, this is me and your buyer. But he was going to get a home in Upper Darby. And he made an offer where we jumped out the window on the offer. We offered $30,000 more than what the listing price was, and we also waived in inspections, and we also had a guarantee for the appraisal, and we still got outbetted. Now, this is Philadelphia's market, so I'm talking about a suburb of Philadelphia. But I think the same consistent issue is that we just don't have a lot of homes out there. And the reason is
We
because
don't.
people are locked into, like us, the 2 point. I got one property for 2.67 that I keep talking about. And you'll hear there needs to be a strong case for me to sell this home with a 2.6% interest rate. So I feel like the uh the main reason for this statistic as far as homes increasing in price is because there's just not a lot of homes out there, man. What you think?
Yeah, yeah, no, the demand is crazy. But see, you know what? You said something that we have always said in the business for forever and a day, and we'll always say it. Real estate market is local, right? And so this grid from the MLS for Houston or Tulsa, right? Or let's say San Francisco, right? A completely different market where on the West Coast and NorCal and
Mm,
SoCal, the prices were going up like 30,
right.
40%. If Khalid brought this same grid up, but it was for San Francisco, I'm willing to bet that median sales price is a big fat red arrow going down,
Definitely.
right? Because we've seen homes violently be inflated
Right.
price wise
Right.
over there. And then obviously now with interest rates being high and people being a little cautious of the market and kind of, willing to, kind of wait it out and see where we're going with things, and no one wants to buy that $2.5 million property right now, not in this market. And now that house sits forever, and now the price is being corrected or reduced. And again, I'm willing to bet if he puts up a couple of different markets, their numbers wouldn't look like ours. So again, we're speaking only about the Philly market, friends. What you see on TV is not always what you'll see in your local market. And obviously, the two of us can talk about your markets, but we obviously are experts in the Philly market.
Right. And if you go, like you said, if you go to the next one, let's go to the next one as far as new listings, they're down a quarter. They're down a quarter
Yeah.
from last year. So that I mean, people just aren't putting their houses on the market at the same rate. In March, some people were probably holding off for the spring market. I mean, the spring market's here.
Hmm.
It was 91 yesterday. Um,
Yeah.
so the
Yeah.
spring market's here. So maybe next month, when they do April's numbers, this number will improve a little bit. But March is still kind of in the winter month. So I
Yeah.
don't know what you think.
I was surprised to see
Mm,
that. I was really surprised. That was to me that was one of the bigger surprises. I know that's probably tied into the number of showings
right.
as well. But I was surprised to see that number drop. In fact, that one stuck out to me because I thought we'd be at a better place inventory wise, knowing that I would assume that people that do our jobs inform our buyers that because the market is what it is, you'll have less competition, right? Buyers should have less competition than they did in 2020 and 2021. And if you're selling your property, right, where we obviously know buyers become sellers and sellers become
Mm,
buyers, right? And so you figure, well, okay, rates were 2%. I know I can sell my house in 5 minutes and then I can buy a house, regardless of how long it takes, I'll get a great rate. Well, now rates are a lot
right.
higher. And so that number right there for new listings tells us that sellers are being cautious because, yeah, I might still be able to sell my house at a great price. As next door it says 324 up 5.5%. Might be able to sell my house at a really good price. But what about when it comes time for
Right.
me to buy? Now I got to buy a house with this, crappy
Right.
interest rate, and you telling me the inventory is low, and it's probably going to take me 6 months to buy a house, right? That's what a seller may be, talking themselves out of a
Right.
deal. Hence, we're seeing, a lesser number for new listings. But that one was surprising to me.
Gotcha, man. Moving on to the next one, the median days on market. How long are homes sitting? So compared from last March of 2022 to this March is 4 more days. So homes last month, last year, March of 2022, let me say it correctly, homes were only on the market an average of 9 days. Now it's increased to
Yep.
13 days. So what this is telling me is that yeah, you can get a higher price, but as a seller, you may have to wait a little bit longer. It's not going to be open house where lines are down the street, um, or you're going to have a bunch of offers with no inspections. You're still going to get your number for the most part if your house is priced correctly. Okay, that's the
correctly.
number one thing. If your house is priced correctly, what these numbers are showing is that you're still going to get your number, but you may have to wait a little longer. What's your thoughts?
So I'm a nerd, and so when I first seen that number, I started looking back to, again, not the 2 years that we all know were just historic, right? 2020 and 2021. But I started looking back further, and then I bumped into a couple articles that say a healthy market is a house that sits on the market median days of at least two
Mm,
weeks. So what that tells me is that we're pushing towards a more of a healthier market where buyers will have more time to decide if that's my house, right? Instead of having to make, and I mean, look, me and you were there frontline and center where we waived inspections, we paid transfer taxes, we bought houses sight unseen. Khalid, just put me on FaceTime real quick and just run through that house real fast, and then I'll decide if I want to buy it. Meaning, I never stepped foot in that house, but I'm willing to put an offer in on it. Why do I have to do these crazy things? Because we had not yet 9 days was the median average. However, we know houses were selling literally in like 72 hours. And, now we're starting to be able to say, well, you know what? Let me sleep on it. That's what that shows me. Let me sleep on it. Let me pray on it. Let me talk to my mom about it. Right. And as a seller, that tells you, like you said, you may have to schedule an open house.
right,
Your agent may actually have to market this.
all right. Did we lose you? Okay. So the next one, I want to skip past closed sales for a second and go down to months of supply because this is
Yes.
another stat that shows the health of the market,
Hmm.
whether we have a buyer's market or a seller's market. So usually for a healthy market, months of supply is around 6 or 7 months. So for those of you who don't know what this means, what this stat means is that if we were to buy up all the homes on the market right now, how long would it take? So a healthy market is 6 to 7 months. Right now, the Philly market is at 1.4%. So what that means, and that's up 56%. So what that means is that if we stop right now and we bought all the homes in Philadelphia, it would take us less than a month and a half. And that's what I've been saying this whole time is that a lot of this information is predicated on us not having a lot of homes out there for sale. And this is the one where this is the stat that reigns true that there's just not a lot of homes out there. So without there being more supply, it's going to be tough for prices to come down because if you took any type of business course, you understand supply and demand. So the supply is just not there.
It's just not. And that is a
What do you think?
national issue. That is a national issue, a local issue, a regional issue, city issue, state issue. Like that's a real issue, and from again being a nerd and reading and looking at certain information, at any given time during the course of a year there's 8 to 10 million people that are looking to buy a property, right? And we've had anywhere between a million to maybe 1.5 million homes to sell 8 million people. Like, you do the math, that just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't work, right? And so you got all of this pinned up demand, but with just such a short supply, we end up in situations where we have, bidding wars and multiple contracts. And again, people skipping out on home inspections and, people having to shop for 3 and 4 months to purchase a home. So what I would say to many of you is you can't control, that number. So then the emphasis then or the focus then becomes, well, what can I control? Well, I can make sure again from, hello, I'm a lender, so I can make sure that, my work history looks good. I haven't had a crap ton of jobs over the last 2 years. I've saved up assets, liquid assets, to be able to put towards my transaction. My credit, is as strong as it is now as it's ever been. Um, and that my income is reliable, right? And that I go to work every day and I earn a living and I pay my taxes, right? And so as long as I pay my bills and I got a solid gig history and I've actually saved some money. Oh yeah, I did go to a couple classes and now I'm eligible for some grants and things like that to help with my down payment. As long as I got all my proverbial shit together, then I know I can't control those things. But when it is time to buy, and I also have an aggressive agent on my side, right, and a good lender to rely on, that I know my time is coming, regardless of all this data that you two have just been rambling about. I know I'll be able to buy a house this year because I know I'm a strong buyer, if that makes sense.
Right. No, definitely, definitely. If there's going to be one stat that talks about the supply, if we're looking at the supply and demand curve, if there's going to be one stat that's an indicator of the supply, is going to be months of supply. But
We
on
need
the
that
other
house.
end, if there's one stat that's going to be indicator of the demand, it's going to be showings. Okay. So you can't see because Shad's right here, but this showings is down 26.6%
Significantly.
from last year. So as we had mentioned earlier, is basically a quarter. The activity is down a quarter. And for buyers, that means there's less competition out there. There's less competition as far as people out there that's getting homes. And for sellers, as we spoke about earlier, that just means the open houses. Your real estate agent is going to have to actually not just stick a sign in the ground and get 10 billion offers over asking, cash, waiving inspections. Um, that's just not going to happen anymore because there's not that many folks. Unless you're now, there are places that have stronger demand than others. Okay, so for example, out in Delaware County, Montgomery County, if your house is priced reasonable, then they're still jumping out the window. And if it's a nice home, if it's a nice home and price right, people for the most part are still jumping out the window for those homes. But if you're in Philadelphia, not so much. And this is one of the tail reasons is that showings are down. So there are a lot of people who are on the sidelines, and one of the biggest reasons for that is because of interest rates. Interest rates has knocked a lot of buyers silly and having them sit on the sidelines, man. So what do you think about that stat for
Yeah, that
showings?
showing stat is not that doesn't make me feel good, right? I need people to be interested in the market, and that means showings is like a direct number in regards to consumer engagement, right? And so if we see showings up, that's again, it means people are engaged. Whether it had pending sales or not, that's another thing. But at least we want interested buyers, right? We want committed buyers. And so that's just good for the real estate ecosystem. And if showings are down, that means I don't have your attention, right? So what does have your attention? Probably inflation, right?
Mm.
Probably, good paying jobs or the lack or access of. It means having less money at my disposal to maybe put towards a real estate transaction. And so there's something keeping people away. Could be a number of things keeping people away. A lot of it obviously is again the mortgage interest rates are almost double what they were 12 to 18 months ago. So that's going to cool some things down. If the Federal Reserve wanted to cool things down and wanted to cool real estate down, well, there you have it. 175,000 less showings in a year. That's a huge indicator. It doesn't make me feel
Hilarious.
good. It doesn't make me
All
feel
right.
good.
And if you look at, I mean, if you look at the life cycle of a sale, you have the showings. You put something under contract, it goes into pending, and then after pending, it goes into close. And you can see all of those three indicators are down 20+%. So what is it saying? The activity just isn't there. So okay, so talked about that, man. As far as outlook, what do you see happening in the second quarter of 2023 here?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, I know you're probably looking at one of the more volatile markets that we've ever seen. We can lose a quarter point off of interest rates. We can gain a quarter point with it. Just one adverse, press conference, or one report shifting or pushing the narrative, pushing the needle. So I am optimistic that we'll be on the other side of 6%, probably somewhere in the mid to high fives by year's end. And that's not me just being a hope, and a hopeful, optimistic person. I do think we're on the other side of this inflation hierarchy and we're starting to cool down. And as inflation cools down, interest rates will also follow. They've been a little sluggish. We've started to see some reports that, show that we are starting to see a softening. And so, again, you would think rates would respond quickly. They haven't, not as much, but I think we've seen the worst. I don't think we'll be in the sevens or approaching eights. I do think we'll be, with better rates. And like I said, I think we'll, because of that, if we do get any type of good news over the next couple of months, I think you might see an extended spring market that for the first time in a while goes well into summer, right? And so a lot of people pump the brakes, they hit the shores, they hit the, vacation button, kids are out of school. You won't see as many, transactions, but I do think rates, if we get a little love, and we don't even need a lot, but if we get a little love, because every time we do get something and the market throws us a bone, we see mortgage applications go up. So I think we'll see a elongated spring market because good news, I think, is on the horizon. Better news, I won't say good news. So by the year's end, I think we'll be probably mid to high fives in interest rates. But I think we'll have a maybe not the best spring, but it's a spring that'll take us into June, July, and possibly August.
Sounds good, man. So before we wrap this up, man, why don't you tell the people where they can find you?
So again, I'm Shad Hammond, Shad Knows Loans. On Instagram, I'm Shad Knows Loans. LinkedIn and Facebook, I am Shad Hammond. I am, like I said, a originator, investor, former agent. I am a brand marketing strategist. So if anybody needs help with their social media, digital selling and social selling, digital marketing, obviously I can help out. Hit me up on any of those platforms, and I'll be glad to assist.
Cool. And this is Khalid Nathan Aleem, the real estate boss. So if you're looking to buy a home, sell a home, or invest in real estate, I got you.